Well, thank you guys for joining us. Jens and I are going to be presenting on financial aid and scholarship tips and tricks that we have collected over the many years that we've been doing this.
Yeah, I work at Eastern Washington University, so I'm actually in charge of financial aid and admissions. So if there's a story about a scholarship or an application process or a financial aid scenario, we've probably seen it at some point. We have about 12,500 students that we work with, and they come from all walks of life with all sorts of situations and backgrounds. So there's lots of avenues and opportunities for them to explore financial aid and scholarships.
Yeah, and I work for a scholarship organization called Washington State Opportunity Scholarship, where I support students with career and placement development. But for the past 10 years, I've been in higher ed helping students go to college as well as pay for college through avenues like scholarships. And so this is kind of a collection of the things that we've been experiencing and struggled with over the years as a non-traditional student myself. I got married really early, and so as a 18-year-old, started working construction, realizing, hey, I actually want to go back to school. I want to try a different route. And that's when I've discovered that there is a whole bunch of financial support that I could tap into. And so I decided to go to Eastern, started doing my scholarship searches and figuring out the best way to pay for school. And long story short, I was able to cover most of my scholarship debt or most of my higher education debt with scholarships anyway. And so this is kind of going to be an intro to what I will share and how I did all that later on.
Yeah, and when I was in high school, my family moved, and so I lived on my own when I started college. So I was 17, living on my own, and had to go to college and figure out how to make ends meet because I was working a summer job as a 17-year-old, and it didn't. I think in Minnesota at the time, it paid $5 an hour, $5.60 an hour, so it was terrible. And had to figure out how to make that work. And then later as an adult, made that commute down to WSU 3 times a week. So 75 minutes each way, 90 if you're following the speed limit. And then had to do that for 4 years. So had 3 kids while I was doing that, trying to balance home, work, and family. So know the situation that a lot of folks are in and how hard it is to make everything pencil out.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to switch screens here and go to our slideshow. Okay.
Right, that's us. This is what we're talking about.
Yep.
So we already did that part. So check 1, already done. And what we're going to do is we're going to split this up into 2 sections, really. Just a general broad overview of financial aid and what's included, and then really switch into the scholarships portion, which is where students have a lot more control over their fate and their future. So in terms of financial aid, it really actually includes a series of several things, one of which is scholarships. The first one is grants and waivers, and then scholarships. These are your free money areas. You do not have to pay this money back. It just comes straight off your bill.
Totally worth it.
Yep. And so obviously that's what most students are looking for. Those are also the categories that are hardest to get.
Yes.
A lot of students also end up with work study, and that's just a part-time job where the money for the job comes not from the university for the most part or the college, but it comes from the state or federal government. And so there's separate application processes for all 3 of these things that are already on the board. And the last big category that students usually end up looking at is loans. And I don't know what Stan's personal opinion is, but my recommendation always as a non-financial advisor who is not making financial advice is to stay away from loans if at all possible. A dollar saved is a lot cheaper than a dollar that you borrow and pay interest on. Another philosophy is like better to live like a student while you're in college than to live like a student after you've graduated. And so loans can follow you around forever. I've still got college loans from grad school.
Yeah. I mean, that's, so yes, I agree. I think loans make a really good security blanket if you have family, you have children, and you've exhausted all the other resources. And so this is just a great way to have that security of extra funds coming in. Just know it's true, you have to pay it all back. And so Jens will talk more about loans in a little bit.
Second thing second, it's really different cost depending on where you go to college. So a really great strategy that a lot of students at EWU pursue is they start at a community college and then transfer over to a four-year institution like EWU or Washington State University. And that's not just because it's convenient. It often is more convenient, particularly if you're in Spokane and don't have time to commute out to campus all the time. Certainly driving down to WSU can be hard for a lot of students, but it's also a lot more affordable. And so if cost is a key consideration, figuring out that puzzle is really key. Washington's a great state in terms of how credits transfer back and forth. So, and community colleges of Spokane, both SFCC and SCC, have great partnerships with the four-year institutions in the region. And so it's a really great thing. It's one of the reasons why Greater Minds is sort of pulling all the community leaders together in the education space to even make it better for students. But one of the things you'll want to determine is how much are you really willing to pay, and know that, for example, tuition is just one component of the overall cost. So you usually have room and board, which might be living on campus if that's something you're pursuing, or just trying to pay your rent if you're living off campus. There's going to be books and supplies, and that's not going to be usually on your tuition bill. And then you're going to have other costs like driving out to campus, bus passes, and other expenses that rise up during the school year. So all of those need to be sort of into your budget. The third thing is that sticker price and what you actually pay are almost never the same thing. Right. So this is from a website put together by an independent company that just looks at the data that each institution submits. So if you're looking at 3 institutions in Spokane, they each have a sticker price that seems really big, but you pay a dramatically different amount at the end of the day. And a lot of times, if you're just paying tuition, that's a relatively small number. So community colleges, Spokane, one of the most affordable options in the region, really does start you off on a secure path with a low entry point in terms of price. And a lot of students make that decision early on because price is one of the things that they're concerned about. At the opposite end, you can go to a private institution like Gonzaga. The sticker price is really high, but almost no student ends up paying that sticker price. In fact, at Gonzaga, no student actually paid sticker price last year that the data was collected. And so between those options, you can see that even if you're not sure where you're going, you're already starting to see that the overall cost that's going to show up on a website is usually less than the cost the student pays. So those are all key considerations. The point we want to make here is that college is an option for nearly every student, even if price is a really sensitive topic for you and your family.
Absolutely.
A few things, though, that are really hard truths about some of the free money options, grants and waivers. There's usually not enough money, and what money does exist doesn't usually cover all your costs. So, for example, there's some really great grant opportunities in Washington, but they will only cover tuition costs. So they might not cover your cost of housing. Some of them may not cover the cost of books, depending on the different opportunities that are available. So know that your core cost is going to be the tuition and fees cost, and then everything else is going to be a little bit added on to that. You may not qualify for a lot of grants and waiver opportunities. Very candidly, most of them are based on income. Mm-hmm. And Washington is pretty generous in its determination, but sometimes it's twice the poverty level for some of the childcare grants, or it might be a median family income. And so if you're in a workplace, you and your wife, or you and your husband or partner are all working, you're going to end up in a scenario where your family household income might be more than the median, and you may not end up qualifying for some of the grant programs that exist. That doesn't mean you should not try and shouldn't explore them, but just know that that's a possibility that exists. The other part is that it's first come, first served. And so if you miss a deadline for some of these applications, some of the grant opportunity disappears really quickly. At EWU, for example, February 1st is that deadline, just around the corner. And so if a student doesn't submit their FAFSA by that date, they can miss out on some Pell Grant funding because other students will have qualified for it first. And then one of the challenges with this is that you have really little control in the process. It's usually driven by a formula, and either you meet the formula's criteria or you don't. And so everybody always wishes that there was more grant money, from educators to people who work at institutions to students to even legislators, but there just isn't enough money to go around to all the students who have demand for it. Getting grants is a relatively straightforward process for students in Washington and in Spokane. You go to two places. So you complete the FAFSA, which is going to qualify you for federal and state grants at most institutions in the state. So the state actually follows all the rule, or the state institutions, so community colleges of Spokane, EWU, WSU, they follow all the rules that the governments at the federal and state level lay out and award the grants and waivers on those rules. So you do one application and it qualifies you for wherever you're thinking about going. If you're a student who can't fill out the FAFSA, perhaps because you don't have legal residency in the United States, but you are a resident of Washington, you can apply for the WASFA, and that will allow you to qualify for state grants and waiver opportunities. Now, getting waivers is similar to getting grants, but waivers tend to be reserved for certain categories of students. So a grant is an organization essentially saying, here's a fund of money that we want you to take advantage. A waiver is essentially a school or the state saying, because you're a certain type of employee or because you have certain criteria, we're going to waive a portion of the cost. So for example, state employees can attend a college or university for relatively cheap way. Some, like I think at EWU, it's
$5 a course.
Yeah. So it's really affordable, but that's a career change for a lot of people.
Yes.
I will say though that we have employees who have come to EWU because they qualify for a tuition waiver, and so they can earn a second degree or earn a new degree for relatively cheap.
I finished my master's at Eastern on the employee waiver.
But you no longer work here, Stan.
But I no longer work here.
Certified teachers also qualify for waivers. Veterans, this is a huge category. Veterans and veterans' children and spouses often qualify for special waivers as well. I think at EWU it's a 50% waiver for some populations in the veteran community. These are areas that if you qualify, you should certainly explore because it reduces the price tag right out of the gate.
And that's in addition with the GI ability.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. A lot of employers also offer programs. Mm-hmm. So STCU is an example I can think of in Spokane where they are really supportive of their employees' continuing education. Starbucks is another place. So if you're a barista, like that is a program where working through, I believe they work with Arizona State University, you can take online courses at a reduced cost or maybe even free. I don't know the details of that program. So lots of employers do offer these types of benefits. You just have to ask your HR office if it's available. Senior citizens can also take courses for a reduced price. There's a lot of restrictions around this and how they can get used. But if you're over 60 and exploring additional education opportunities, this might be an area where you can reduce the cost of going to college. The last one is that some private universities have tuition remission. So if you're an employee at Gonzaga, for example, and you've worked there for 10 years, I think, you and your spouse can attend the institution tuition free. This is oftentimes, you see a lot of news stories about this, about somebody who was working at the institution for a long time to help their children or themselves earn a degree. And that was their motivation for taking the job in the first place. All major life changes to get access to these programs, career changes or military options. But if you qualify, you should certainly explore it. And if you're really concerned about the cost, these are options that you should know exist. The other one that we see a lot of that is hard to address is childcare funding. There are not a whole lot of great programs for this nationally or at the state level. Again, it's a lot like the grants. There is not enough funding to go around. Childcare is also really, really expensive. So in fact, childcare is more expensive than attending community colleges at Spokane or Eastern. Yep. So if you have kids, and we do, like I sort of lament the fact that my childcare is more than a tuition bill at Eastern every month. So it's really tough for families to make that work. And so there are, however, a few options. Most of the institutions do have a form of on-campus childcare that is available. Community colleges of Spokane, for example, has a really great program that earns a lot of accolades in the community. EWU has a program with grants that are available for students, and students are prioritized at these institutions because that's who they want to take advantage of it. The state, if you meet in some income requirements, it's, I believe, twice the poverty level, so you can have up to twice the poverty level, does have some subsidies available for families to help reduce the cost. There are also some early childhood education and assistance programs or Head Starts areas that will offer opportunities for childcare. This is usually one of those things that's a sticking point for working adults who need childcare to cover the time when they're at night classes. And again, childcare at night is hard to find. Or they have a really strange schedule that requires them to be away from home and work to attend classes, and finding childcare can be tough. I wish it was better.
Yeah, one thing I want to add to that is to make sure that every year that you submit FAFSA, to be very clear about what your expenses are with childcare expenses. If you had another child or things like that, always update FAFSA. Go to your financial aid office, tell them the updates. So I did this every year that I attended college. And what you're doing here is you're increasing the ceiling of total amount of funds that you can receive. And so it is worth trying to keep raising that ceiling because,
if you have more children or you get remarried and your family size changes, all of these things really impact the amount of money the state and federal government can make available for you. So if changes happen, let us know. Work study is sort of the last category. This is money for a part-time job. You get this by the same way that you get the grants and most waivers. You fill out the FAFSA or you fill out the WASFA. And both of those opportunities are great opportunities if you're not already working. Most of these jobs are going to be state minimum wage jobs. They're going to be on the college campus for the most part. There are some limited exceptions. And then they are going to limit you to 19 to 20 hours a week so that you can't qualify for benefits, which is really tough. Like, I know that I couldn't attend college if I didn't have access to certain benefits, healthcare, insurance, things like that. And so you won't get these through work study.
Yeah, so just make sure when you fill out the FAFSA for work study, you click work study, the checkbox there, because that's the only way that they're going to consider you for it. And if you do receive it, know that there's just about any department on a college campus that is willing to hire a work study student because they basically get a person free.
Because the federal government and state government is paying you're paying your income. The last area is loans, and then we'll switch over to scholarships. But loans are available through the federal government, primarily. Through the FAFSA. So if you're paying attention, the FAFSA is a super key form to fill out. Always fill it out every year. It's free to fill out. If it's not free, you're getting scammed someplace, but it's free to fill out. And even if you don't go to college that year or you just want to see what's available, you should fill it out. There's no penalty for filling it out. Loans come in a couple different varieties. Subsidized, it's based on your need. It's a fancy way of saying the government pays the interest on your loan while you're in college, which is really nice.
It is nice.
Unsubsidized means you have to pay the interest on your own. If you don't pay it, it gets added to your loan. And so if you go to school for 7 years and you're on unsubsidized loans, you can end up with a lot of loan debt.
Yep.
Direct plus loans are another form that the government offers. A lot of graduate students end up using these. There's no limit on this amount. Of course, because there's no limit, a lot of students end up taking on a lot of loan debt. So these are all the types of loans that can be administered by the federal government. If that's still not enough to help cover the cost of attending, or if you don't qualify for these options, there are private loans that can be available. They tend to be more expensive, though, and there aren't as many guarantees for students.
That's right. All right, so let's switch gears to talk about the scholarship mentality. And so unlike grants and waivers, you have way more control over applying for scholarships. And so this is where it's worth taking the time. I personally made it my part-time job to be applying for scholarships as I was going to school, because it definitely paid. It totally paid.
Were you a high GPA student?
No, I was not a high GPA student. In fact, that's a myth. A lot of students assume that scholarships are academic based, so you have to be a high performing academic student. And the truth of it is there are many, many scholarships that are need based, that are specific to majors, to different fields that you're pursuing, not GPA.
Or test scores. Yep.
Or test scores. And so, yeah, you answered that question. So the hardest scholarship to apply for is always the first one. You have to get your feet wet. You have to look at the process, see if you qualify, complete the application, but just do the first one. Because once you do that, you have all the materials now to apply for the next one. And you are now familiar with the process. So, and it gets significantly easier over time. So definitely, apply to the first one.
So a lot, in that case, it's a lot like applying for jobs. Like you put all the materials together for that first job application, and it takes forever, and you have to write a cover letter, and your resume has to be put together and checked. But once it's done the first time, and I don't know if this is true for every job, you can kind of copy and paste it, and that's the case for a lot of scholarships as well.
Yeah. One of the cool advantages that a non-traditional student has is that you have work experience, you have life experience. And so crafting resumes, cover letters, and crafting, scholarship applications, very similar. So you already have skills that it takes to apply for scholarships. Okay, treat scholarships like work. We just talked about that one. So you can mention this one.
Yeah, so scholarships there's some that are really big. I think some of the biggest ones are $25,000 a year, which is astronomical. Some of them are much smaller. I think the smallest scholarship I ever got was $150.
Hey, it's money.
It is money, but it's useful. So I remember when I was applying for scholarships, I was obviously summer job. I think I was making $5.60 an hour, $5.60 an hour. It took me 4 hours to apply for a few scholarships. And I think I calculated my hourly earnings at $1,000 an hour because I got one.
That's impressive.
Right?
Yeah, and similar example for us, when my wife and I were going back to school, we both applied for a grant that doesn't exist anymore. It was the EOG, Educational Opportunity Grant. And it was going out of commission, and we thought we were going to miss the deadline. So we spent 8 hours writing this application, submitted, and then forgot about it because we're like, the chances are so. A month later, my wife received $3,000 with that one. I received $2,500 with that one. The beautiful thing was it renewed each year that we attended college. So it was definitely worth the 8 hours that we put into filling out that application.
And this is one of those big differences between, say, the work that you do on the FAFSA and your scholarship application process. FAFSA, rules, formulas. If you meet it, you get it. If you don't meet it, you don't get it. Scholarships, you can work as hard as you want and qualify for almost as many scholarships as you want.
Yeah, exactly. Oops. So last piece of this, don't do this alone. At the time I was starting, I didn't have the network. And so my wife was the one who was like looking over my shoulder and throwing away all this writing that I was doing. But if you have somebody around you, surround yourself with people that you trust, who can read your essays, read your applications. Again, it takes time, it takes practice, but once you get comfortable with it, it's easier to clean up and to apply for the next one. All right, so Jens called this the Pichinevskiy method. So like I introduced earlier, there was a time where I started the traditional route with scholarship search engines, and I was just bothered by how much time it took, and I couldn't still find the relevant scholarships that I could apply for. And so I did find an easier way. And so that's what I want to share with you right now.
Because if you type scholarships into Google, you're going to get a billion hits.
That's right. And the scholarship search engines are good as well, but it's like 3,000 results that you have to filter through. And really what you want is scholarships that are the most relevant to you, that have the highest chance of you actually writing and winning a scholarship. So my advice is to start with your high school. So a lot of high schools have college and career centers where they have content in there or scholarships in there that are for students that graduated from the high school and for students that are alumni of that high school. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the returning student, the continuing college student, or the alumni scholarship applications in your high school. And so for example, I graduated from Soap Lake High School, which is a tiny little city somewhere. If Freda doesn't even know where Soap Lake is at, kind of a thing. And so I applied. They only had one scholarship. I didn't get it my senior year, but I did get it the following 3 years each time, because I was probably one of the few students who kept coming back and applying for that one. So the next place is searching your city that you're a part of. So if you're in Spokane, start searching Spokane businesses, organizations, associations, Chamber of Commerce, anything that has some kind of resemblance of a scholarship on there. So if you're high school, typically high schools already include city and county and other scholarships, but if it doesn't, you can do the work yourself and find those local scholarships that are relevant to you. All right, so keep expanding your search to your county. A really good example of this one is in Novia. I believe it has like 13 counties that have about 2 to 6 different scholarships that students can receive in each county. And so sometimes high school websites don't include this. That's why you want to branch out and search for those scholarships so that you could get those on your list of scholarships to apply for. Just make sure you're reading the qualifications very carefully, because again, we don't want you to waste time on a scholarship that you don't qualify for, because again, time is precious in this situation. Expanding your search even more to larger businesses. A fun example of this one is Inland Power. So it is, I receive power from them. I believe Jens receives power from them. But it's a huge region that is basically Eastern Washington area, some of Idaho, and members who receive power basically qualify for this particular scholarship. Fun fact about it is if you receive a scholarship from them, you could go to any college at any accredited college at any state in United States, which is kind of cool. Yeah, do you have a cool story about life insurance?
Yeah, so when I was in high school and I was trying to figure out how to make ends meet for college, my high school counselor recommended that I get a life insurance policy, which sounds really weird. And the reason he recommended it, though, is because if you're a member of that life insurance company, you qualify as potential for the scholarship. So I bought a $12 a year or $12 a month life insurance policy and applied. There were 2 of us who applied from my high school who were getting life insurance from this company. Both of us received it. It was a $4,000 a year scholarship for 4 straight years, so $16,000. And all I had to do was buy life insurance for $12 a month, which to me at the time seemed like a really good investment. But there are tons of scholarships that are like this, and people often overlook these. So churches are a really great example. Your church, if you're a member of a faith community, likely has a scholarship opportunity that's available for you. Service and civic organizations, so Kiwanis,
Rotary Club,
Girl Scout alumni, like all of these things have scholarship opportunities that are not just for 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds. They're available for adults who are members of their community. And oftentimes students overlook those. And sometimes those are the least applied for scholarships because they're not on everybody's radar because not everybody qualifies.
Yeah, that's right. So the next one I want to go over into is talking about colleges and universities. I'm going to spend some time here because universities and colleges have large foundations that they give money to students to go to school. And so, for example, how many scholarships does Eastern have?
There's 400 uniquely named scholarships.
That's a lot.
I think it's like 1,000 total scholarships are given out each fall.
And what's cool is that universities and colleges have already figured out that, hey, we need a simpler process to giving out scholarships. So they've created like one scholarship application that you could be considered for hundreds of scholarships.
Like Lord of the Rings, but with scholarships. One scholarship application to rule them all.
But here's my advice though, is that even though there's this one application, the trick is with colleges and universities is that you still must look for scholarships outside of that general scholarship pool. And here's why. There's a lot of times student departments get grants and get changes come about, right, where they have received money and they don't get time to get put on the main website or to get into the scholarship pool. So for example, I know for a fact that Eastern has a STEM scholarship, which is for students pursuing STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And it's a lot of money. It's about $7,000 per student. And so there's about 4,000 students in the College of STEM right now. And guess how many scholarships we'd receive? About 12 applications. We'd receive about 12. And so truth be told, we probably gave 10 out of those 12 out to those students who applied. It's kind of ridiculous how little time students spent. And so another example was there was a scholarship at Eastern's campus that I actually had to search for and ask administrators for it. And it took me 2 years to find it. But when I did, I realized this particular scholarship I have to be nominated for. The good news was I already have mentors and people that I work with and associate with, and they had no problem being like, sure, I will put a recommendation for you. And so my last year in my undergraduate, I actually received the most amount of money. I actually tapped out of my ceiling where they had to remove some of they removed work study from me, and then they removed even some of the grants I received because I got so much more scholarships on top of that.
Yeah. Colleges aren't trying to make it hard to find these opportunities, but a lot of the restrictions are placed by donors. So if a donor has a specific requirement that you attended a particular high school and are also studying a particular major, the university might not be able to administer it. Or if the foundation or the granting organization is not controlled by the university can't have you apply for it. A really great example at Eastern is music scholarships are controlled by the music department, not by the admissions office or the financial aid office. So if you want to apply for a music scholarship, and you don't have to be a music major, you just have to be a person who loves music, you apply through the music department separately. And nearly every college, 2-year and 4-year, has opportunities that are like that. Particularly once you become an upperclassman, those scholarship applications are in the department. So if you're an adult student transferring in, or if you've got a few credits, or even if you're a new student and you're entering into a program and you know what you want to study, in addition to filling out that college application for the university or college you're attending, reach out to that department or that major and see what other opportunities are out there.
Yeah, so I guess to wrap up the college piece, search your college more deeply, search your department, search your major program, and then other clubs that are associated with it for additional scholarships that it has. So, and I did this every year. I just kept keeping my eye open. I would see a flyer hanging up on the wall. I'd come up to it. I tear it down so nobody else applies for it. And then I go and apply for it. So again, that's the recommendation there. All right. The other piece is widen your search to state organizations. And so, for example, I get to talk about Washington State Opportunity Scholarship here. They have 2 scholarships. One is for baccalaureate scholarship, which is the 4-year scholarship for students pursuing high demand fields like again, STEM and healthcare, which is science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And then they have a second scholarship, which is the new career and technical scholarship, which is the high demand in vocational and trades. So at the 2-year level. And again, students, to qualify for both of these, you have to have lived in Washington State, graduated from a high school in Washington State to qualify. You need to be medium to low income bracket. And I love that the medium portion of it, because a lot of students who are in the medium bracket don't get enough financial aid. And so I strongly recommend looking up the Washington State Opportunity Scholarship. There's currently applications open and they close February 6th.
Okay. Most financial aid offices at the college or university you're applying to will have resources that clearly indicate what state level opportunities they are. But again, this can be really specific. So for example, if you're interested in entering the aeronautical engineering space, or you want to do like manufacturing and you know you want to work with long-term goals to work with a company that is providing supplies and parts for Boeing, there are lots of aeronautical scholarships available from Boeing and subsidiaries of Boeing and all their partners. Yep. But those are going to be largely at the state or national level.
Yeah, for sure. All right. And so once you've exhausted this particular list, and you should have about, 10, 15 scholarships on your list, depending on your qualifications. And if you have time, now you want to start opening up the scholarship search engines, which, includes the, and I would recommend starting with washboard.org, right? So this is all Washington State related scholarships. So start there first. And then you can branch out to other ones like fastweb.org, scholarship.com, and Unigo. All right, so really quickly about scholarships, the don'ts of scholarship applications. So Yeah. So never submit an incomplete application.
Don't do it.
They basically will never make it to the review file. That's just one way of the process of elimination there. So make sure that everything that they request for is in there. If it's official transcripts or unofficial, it's in there. If it's, your FAFSA report, it's in there. So everything that they request for, package it up all nicely, submit it to them if it's hard copy. If it's electronic, just make sure that you've uploaded those documents. Don't apply if you don't qualify. Again, we're talking about time is precious here for the returning adults or non-traditional students. And so if you don't qualify, don't waste your time submitting writing essays for that particular scholarship. Now, the only caveat I give here is, what if you find a really cool hole in the wall scholarship that you believe nobody else has heard of? Maybe take a chance and submit the application there. I've heard of students receiving scholarships that they didn't qualify for because they were the only applicant for that one.
Yeah, but this is an easy one. So if the scholarship is looking for a recent high school grad and you graduated in 2002, don't waste your time. If it says they're looking for Hispanic females and you're not a Hispanic female, don't waste your time. Your time is precious. Really focus on the things you qualify for.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other one is never write poorly, right? So basically take your time to write the stuff, have somebody look over it once or twice. The issue here is it's a pet peeve for application and essay reviewers. It's a pet peeve for me. And so you don't want to kind of, force a reviewer to think negatively about what they're reading, because you're kind of triggering the wrong things for them. So take the time, write it well, right? Grammatically, spelling, all of that needs to be accurate.
You're a great writer, right, Stan?
No, I am not. I heavily rely on people around me, and it is something that I've been working on since I've gone to college. And so, but hey, I learned to ask for help.
Asking for help is a huge college skill, and actually is one of the things many colleges look for as a sign of success, that a student knows how to reach out to experts and to ask for help.
Yeah. So the other one that you should never do is leave blanks on questions or optional essays. Like, guys, this is the place where scholarships want a little bit more information from you and you leave it blank. First of all, it doesn't look good, but also you missed an opportunity to give them a little bit more about yourself, more information. So try to fill it out completely. Again, don't miss your deadlines. This one's pretty obvious. If you miss a deadline, it doesn't get into the review pile. It just gets chucked. So make sure when you're applying for scholarships, you kind of follow, chronologically, right? Which scholarships are due first. You fill out those and submit those. And the last one that I want to mention is vague essay responses. This one really bothers me just because it doesn't give the reader anything.
Stan, why did you go to college?
So I went to college because I wanted to get out of construction. I had a family and I wanted a better way of life for them. And also I didn't want to work so hard in construction. And so I used my story, right? The economy went down and I was able to go to college by means of, whatever was available to me at the time. And so use your stories to be able to articulate your responses better. Now, some students don't have great stories. I hear that sometimes a problem. So use personal achievements, accomplishments where you sought after certain goals and you've met them. Those are also great stories to include for an essay.
It's really tough because every student at some level is going to college so they have a better career and they can earn more income and their family can be more secure. But every student has that experience, and you have unique experiences that no one else has. And that really does separate you from everybody else in the pool.
Yeah, so don't say, I want this scholarship because I want to go to college. Like, that's a horrible answer. Yes,
it's true.
But be very specific. Like for me, I want to go to college to study psychology, to work with Dr. Philip Watkins in positive psychology research. Very specific. The more specific you are, the more persuasive it sounds. Is that right? All right. And again, take your time because it totally pays to apply.
And never spend money to submit a scholarship application.
That's right. Sorry. That makes perfect sense. So if you have to pay to submit an application, it's probably a scam. All right, so a couple of scholarship secrets here. The number one complaint that I hear from scholarship foundations and committees is that they don't get enough applications. Now, that's not the same, that's not true for Washington State Opportunity Scholarship. We get quite a bit of applications, but we also give out a significant amount of scholarships.
What are the odds of getting a scholarship?
1 to 1. Or no, 1 to 2, I'm sorry.
One and two. Yeah. Washington State Opportunity Scholarship is 1 and 2, and that's an organization that has enough scholarship applications to read. Yeah. So some of these places, they have 5 scholarships to give out, and they'll get 3 applications in a year.
Yeah, that is very true. All right, so the point, a lot of times students ask, how many should I keep applying for? The truth is, it's honestly about the quality of the application that you create, that you submit to a scholarship foundation. So I know students who submitted 50 or 100 scholarship applications. They're like, I totally wasted my time. And the truth is, they probably didn't apply to scholarships that were more relevant to them, that had the better odds of receiving those scholarships. And so personally, I had about 10 that I applied to every year. And the cool thing is, if I received the scholarship from there already once, they will most likely want to give it to me again because they know I'm worth it.
Proven,
exactly. So we mentioned this one, but make your essays, your scholarship applications personal, right? Share real stories, real examples. Now, we don't want you to go and elaborate on how sad your life might be. We really want you to focus on how you overcame certain challenges to get to where you're at. So focus on the overcoming part of your essays. All right, apply each year. Again, Jens, why do students stop applying their freshman year?
Most students think that there are only scholarships for freshmen. And most students, very candidly, are 17 or 18 at a lot of 4-year and 2-year colleges. And they think the only time you can qualify is when you leave high school and start. And that's just not true. There are scholarships for every part of the student's journey. So whether you're entering as a sophomore or junior or senior, whether you're a transfer student, if you're an adult student, if you and your spouse are both going to college, if only one of you is going to college, if you make a lot of money, if you don't make a lot of money, there are scholarships for nearly every situation.
Yeah, and remember, I've actually received most of my money the last year of college, right? So every year, apply, absolutely. It does get easier over time. This is the part where I have folders of collections of essays and articles that I've saved. And so really, I would just go and rewrite and edit out a new section. So don't recreate the wheel, use the content that you already have.
And so in terms of what you need to do next, if you're thinking about going to college or going back to college, you should make sure you understand how much it's going to cost you and what your college plan is. So how much are you able to spend and how much does it look like it might cost? So most colleges have a net price calculator. You should complete that and determine what they think it might cost you to attend based on your financial situation and a few pieces of information. You want to definitely complete the FAFSA and the WASFA by each college's deadline or by the federal national deadline so that you qualify for the most potential aid. And if you don't apply, if you don't want the aid that they offer you, you can always say no. But if you don't apply, you don't get the chance. You also want to ask your employer or your HR office, if you've got a job, about tuition assistance and what programs are available for employees at your workplace. It's a great way to lower the costs.
All right, and so the last thing that I want to mention is that I've been going to high schools and presenting a boot, the Loot Camp that we did on campus, acquiring this information about how to apply for scholarships. And I was finally able to create an online process for scholarships. Oh, sorry. Yeah, my bad. I jumped straight to additional resources. And so I want to recommend, basically, if you're interested in receiving more information about that stuff, you can fill out my email or send me an email to stan@scholarshipfix.com. But also remember that the GSI and Greater Minds website is actually loaded with resources. Before this, I watched a few webinars on financial aid, on other scholarships tips, on career tips. And so definitely check them out. It's worth it. And then again, utilize the resource at universities and colleges' websites. They have a long list. Eastern Washington University's scholarship website is loaded with alternative resources, with other sites and links. So keep, just if you need more information, it's there. You just got to look for it.
And the great thing about Greater Minds and the universities and colleges in Spokane and the region is that they really are giving you the most reputable, trustworthy sources, because they know they work for students who are coming to their institutions and working with their program. So great resources, make sure you take advantage of them. And that's it. We are right at the end.
Yeah. Thank you very much for hearing us. If you have any additional questions, you can put them in the comments, and we'll probably have Jody respond back to you via email, or however we'll work this out. Do we turn this over to Jody?
I think we do.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was awesome. And I learned a few new tips and tricks. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to share with us today. If anyone does have any questions, feel free to throw them up in the chat box. I do want to be mindful, of course, everyone's lunch breaks and Stan and Yen's time today. I do want to remind everyone that there is a $500 Greater Minds Scholarship currently available, courtesy of BECU, which is super exciting. And so that link is available on greatermindspokane.org. And we would love to see some applications come in for that. We have quite a few, but I think the more the merrier, because we have some amazing candidates for that. So we welcome any and all scholarship applications. Again, thank you. It doesn't look like anyone's adding any questions at this moment, but again, thank you so much to Stan and Jens for sharing their expertise and their partnership in all of our work. So thank you again, and I will send it over. It looks like does someone have a question? Potentially, it looks like it cut over, but maybe not. So, all right, I will let everyone log off, and we will have this posted on the Greater Minds website by hopefully Friday afternoon. But again, thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one.
You too.
That was a good one, Judy. Here, you both. She is. She starts the thing.